This video contains major spoilers for Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. 18 years. It's been 18 years since Metroid Prime 3 released on the Wii. It's been 8 years since Prime 4 was announced. All I can say is, I wish the Prime series would have just stayed dormant. I'm Ouroboros, and this is my review of Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. Prime 4 begins with an action set piece. Samus touches down at a Federation research facility being attacked by a group of space pirates. Nothing really new for the series. I mean, pretty much every game uses some variation of that in the beginning. You fight your way through and encounter Sylux, a character teased in the ending of Prime 3, and one of the many titular hunters in Metroid Prime Hunters. The two forces clash and unintentionally activate an artifact the Federation was studying. Samus, alongside Sylux and a few Federation troopers, are instantly teleported to an unknown planet. You must find your way back home and explore the alien world of Vuros with your newfound psychic abilities, bestowed upon you by the remnants of the Lemorn civilization. That's the opening of Prime 4, and it was fantastic. It sets up the plot, gives the villain a brief spotlight, starts you off with some new abilities. It's honestly perfect. I'm playing the Switch 2 version, and the game is just stunningly gorgeous. I decided to play in the 4K 60 FPS mode, and it's crystal clear and buttery smooth. I love how the Federation troopers are in awe of Samus as you work your way through the opening. I love how it teaches you how to scan things. I love how it shows you the artifact getting attacked by the space pirates while you watch in the Morph Ball tunnel. I love how mystical and pristine Chrono Tower is when you first arrive there. I love how amazingly gorgeous Fury Green is when you first get there. Really, the first 30 minutes of Prime 4 are perfection. I remember seeing some early reviews pop up with low scores, and I was honestly shocked when I was playing this section with just how good it was. Unfortunately, the first 30 minutes is the peak of the game, and my next 9.5 hours was just a slow descent into annoying and painful frustration. This is Miles. He's your funny companion throughout this journey. Those words should never be said in conjunction with a Metroid game. Never. At first, he's charming. You think to yourself, okay, this is new. I probably just have to rescue him and then back to the usual Metroidvania exploration. But no, he is constantly chirping in your ear. For as much as I've praised about Fury Green, his presence completely overwhelms the identity of this stunning forest. And that's a big fucking problem. I don't usually swear much in my videos, but this game has made me so angry that I need to get this off my chest. Fury Green serves as the blueprint for every other area in the game. You go to an area, meet your new charming sidekick with massive fucking air quotes, solve the problem, get the key, and then leave. The issue with this gameplay loop is that it is the complete, polar opposite antithesis to the foundational guiding philosophy behind Metroid. When I talk about the Metroid series, what words come to mind? Isolation, exploration, atmosphere. Prime 4 has none of that because of these side characters. They constantly tell you where to go. If you spend even just 10 minutes not progressing along the very specified main path, somebody will radio you and tell you that you're not doing something right. Miles constantly makes terrible jokes, tells you exactly where to go, what to do, even if you're just roaming around the horribly bland Soul Valley hub area. Even other characters do the same thing. You spend like a quarter of the game escorting them around. You're forced to keep them alive as you make your way through the areas. You even need them to open doors. Fucking excuse me? You mean to tell me that Retro decided to have buddies gate our progression in a fucking Metroid Prime game rather than our upgrades or abilities? How the hell did this idea not get immediately shut down? Why am I waiting like 30 seconds for some slow-ass robot to unblock a path for me instead of just getting some meaningful upgrade that I can use to unlock a door? It's an utter lack of awareness coming from the studio that made the original Prime trilogy. I wouldn't have even minded the characters if you saved them and they just went back to base camp. Like, you find them randomly and give them the coordinates, and poof, off they go. Boom, done. It gives you something to search for on your adventure that's not the usual missile expansion. An even bigger problem is that they don't even stand on their own as actual characters. Miles basically has nothing even remotely productive to add when it comes to dialogue. He says the most obvious shit in the world, or worse. When he gives you hints, it's either unbelievably vague, like, hey, go check out older areas now that you have new stuff. Or, hey, go to this very specific location to progress. Sometimes you'll go to explore an old area and he'll pop up saying that he doesn't think there's anything new here. Like, yeah, buddy, I know. I'm just trying to do what you're supposed to do in a Metroidvania game. And another problem with him is that you pretty much always have to go back to him after finishing an area. You also have to go to see him to get your new beam weapons as well. So you finish Volt Forge and go to Flare Pool. You can't progress, but you get the upgrade for the fire shot, but for whatever reason, you can't just use it? No. That would make too much sense. So you have to make your way back to Miles at the base camp, watch a 2-minute cutscene where he explains what the fire weapon can do, and now you can use it. Because how could I ever put 2 and 2 together and realize that the fire weapon can melt ice? Why? Why would you ever do this? And this is another problem I have with these characters. Everything has to be a cutscene. Meeting them, cutscene. Opening a door, cutscene. Finding a map, cutscene. Everything has to be a goddamn cutscene. So many parts about the original Prime trilogy were amazing because they just played out in normal gameplay. Like in Prime 2, I vividly remember the space pirates going through a portal in Aegon Waste for the first time. I vividly remember Dark Samus annihilating them whilst draining Phazon from some containers. And the issue is that Prime 4 does do this! It happens in the intro! Despite this, none of the characters are even around long enough to actually get any development. They're so bland, one-dimensional, and cartoonish to really have any meaningful staying power. The only character I can even get on board with is Togepi. He's the only one who seems to fit in this world because A, he's not a caricature, and B, he's not always in your face. He takes things seriously and mostly leaves you to your own devices, even when you're in Icebelt. So you've got all these terribly developed characters who you have to escort around the world and save them. Oh yeah, did I mention you also have to res them? Because I didn't know that was a thing until the final boss, when they kept dying to a massive AoE attack. And yet the game has the balls to try to get you to care about them in the mine. You and your happy-go-lucky buddies go in there together, but because the Grievers constantly attack you, each person decides to hold off the horde so that you can get to the bottom and achieve your objective. And of course, they all live because why would they be able to nobly sacrifice themselves to help others? Which they end up doing anyway in the ending. Oh boy, the ending! I really hate this shit. You go through the effort of defeating Sylux, both with a team and one-on-one, only for him to pop back up again, hit Samus with literally only one shot, and basically knock her out of commission? Your group holds back Sylux so that only you can escape? What? Huh? We literally just kicked his ass. Why is it suddenly now every man for himself? I don't understand. Samus just leaves a bunch of people to die on a foreign planet? That's really not in character for her. When I played through this, I immediately pressed the button because I thought it was a joke, but no, this is apparently how the ending is supposed to play out? I don't mind them sacrificing themselves, but not so that Samus can be selfish like this. I mean, this is the woman who has single-handedly blown up planets before. I don't think some random guy who can be stopped by like 3 people and a robot is gonna pose a threat to somebody who regularly kills Lovecraftian horrors. With how much the characters hype up Samus, she seems like a little bitch baby in this ending. Even with all of the issues that I've mentioned. The most annoying things are the things the game doesn't go out of its way to bring up. Why is Silex here? Where are the space pirates? Why are the Metroids even relevant in this game? Why do they suddenly have these weird X-Parasite abilities? Why does some random bozo know that I need to get the memory fruit before going to the final boss? All of the new things about the narrative suck. It feels only natural that the things Retro didn't change are what are so good. All of the optional logs that you read are so interesting. You get to piece together the story of how the Lemoran society fell apart, and they fruitlessly tried to avoid— just kidding, it spells it out for you in cutscenes! The implicit narratives were so good in the Prime trilogy, and while the optional logs are cool, Prime 4 should have stuck to this concept. That's one of the most baffling things about this game. Retro had the blueprint. People have been gushing about Prime 1 for literal decades at this point. I went back and played Prime Remastered when it came out, and that game still holds up remarkably well. It's been 18 years since the last Prime game. I don't think anybody would have blamed them for sticking to the script with a few minor updates. But they couldn't even do that. I was cautiously optimistic for Samus's new psychic abilities. I didn't know how they would fit in with the sci-fi aspects of the series, but they're so cool. In concept. In actuality, they, like just about every other gameplay element, are so painfully, woefully underdeveloped. For example, the psychic bomb. This could have been such an amazing puzzle-solving element. You could have remotely detonated bombs while doing these tricky platforming sections. Or you could have used it to time other movement aspects like grapple beam or the boost ball. But no, it's barely ever used. It gets introduced, and then it feels like the game almost forgets about it. The psychic glove could have been used to hold objects in place while moving other objectives. Or you could have been able to jump up onto an object while holding something in place to take it from one area to the next. But no, it barely is ever used, it gets introduced, and then it feels like the game almost forgets about it. The psychic lasso could have been used in all sorts of creative enemy encounters. You could have used it to manipulate where the enemies are in combat, but no, it's barely ever used. It gets introduced, and then it feels like the game almost forgets about it. None of the upgrades feel unique. In fact, the game calls so many upgrades psychic abilities, but then they're just normal upgrades that we've had for decades now. Psychic boots, psychic grapple, psychic boost ball, psychic spider ball, psychic power bomb. Why even call them that if they pretty much function exactly as they always have? Prime 4 can't even make old upgrades feel interesting. The only one that really gets used is the control beam. The beam upgrades are basically just the same ones we've always had. They're pretty much knockoffs of the wave, ice, and plasma beam from Prime 1, but somehow infinitely less useful? They use their own ammo, which I actually don't mind, but it never seems like they're very effective against enemies. Even when you get the Thunder Shot, Miles says that it should be effective against machines, but I never really found that to be the case. The Viola is super interesting in concept, but is brought down directly because it's tied to Soul Valley, which I will talk more about later. Prime 4 also forces you into a 15-minute long tutorial when you get the bike, which, why? It's a bike! If you were worried about the player getting overwhelmed by the amount of options you have on the bike, then you should have just spread out the upgrades throughout the world. You know, like how a Metroidvania would do it. I mean, yeah, I didn't mind driving around the track and seeing the Akira slide at the end, but it would have been much better for that to have been discovered naturally. There's also no change in combat since the original trilogy. I mean, I guess you have forward and backward dashes now, but the game often gets really confused reading inputs, and there have been countless times when I've tried to jump forward over a shockwave and I just end up dashing into it. You pretty much just shoot enemies until they're dead. And the bosses are even just a mixed bag. I love the various Silex fights. I thought it was genius throwing your morph ball bombs to knock him out of his tornado in the first fight. It's really the only instance of this upgrade being used interestingly. I love grappling around when the floor is lava during the second fight. And it was incredible seeing him steal one of your energy tanks in the final fight. But then you have like Zelios, who's just this amorphous blob with very predictable mechanics. The Omega Griever is a cool fight, but it has way too much health and the fight really drags on. And Varmus is literally one of the most mind-numbing boss fights I've ever seen in a video game. Nothing feels new. In fact, everything feels like a massive downgrade over previous Metroid games, not even the Prime series. Take a look at Dread. That game brought so many cool mechanics with all the different Aeon abilities like the Flash Shift, brought Seeker missiles into the 2D series in the form of Storm missiles, and even refined the iconic Speed Booster with incredible puzzles. Prime 4 does none of this and pretty much directly downgrades many of the other abilities. The only addition that I really loved was how you can now slingshot your way around with the Spider Ball. That was a fantastic addition, and I really hope we see more of that moving forward. And because the game doesn't make any meaningful changes to abilities, and even underutilizes them, puzzle solving is pretty much non-existent in this game. Do you remember when you'd get to a certain room in the old trilogy, press a switch, and the music would shift? Your brain would go into puzzle solving mode until you could finally progress. That was a great feeling. Prime 4 literally doesn't have that. The puzzles, if you even want to call them that, really just boil down to, do you have the upgrade? If yes, then use item. If no, do not pass go. Do not collect $200. This all boils down to the world design of Prime 4. It is so fucking linear. Like, I'm not even being hyperbolic here. There's pretty much only one way to go through each area. Most rooms only have an entrance and an exit. There are rarely more than 2 doors attached to a room, and a third door is almost always connected to a save room, so that doesn't count. And each area plays out almost exactly the same. Fury Green, save miles, fight your way back through enemies. Volt Forge, turn the power on, fight your way back through enemies. Ice Belt, turn the power on, fight your way back through enemies. Great Minds, fight your way through enemies, get to the bottom, come back up. Basically, all of these you go through the area and then return back to the entrance, which is just the exact opposite of what you want a Metroidvania to be. There is almost literally no backtracking. You go back to Volt Forge once, but that's pretty much the exception. The level design here is pitiful and terribly unimaginative. It's so disappointing to go through the same formula. Hell, Volt Forge and Ice Belt are pretty much exactly the same. You go through the entire area, not fighting anything, you turn the power back on, and then you have to make your way back up while fighting all the enemies you woke up. Like, what the fuck? Why did you design it this way? It seemed like the game was gonna let me pick any area in any order, which would have been a really cool concept for a Metroidvania and something that I haven't seen before. It could have been a really bold move for the series moving forward and would have reinforced sequence breaking. And that's been so tied to the series for so long. But no, Prime 4 doesn't give you that freedom, and it doesn't even respect your intelligence normally anyway. And what I really hate is that I actually really love the art direction and the theme of each area. I mean, yeah, they're kind of generic. A forest, a snowy mountain, a volcano, and a cave system aren't really new ideas, but Fury Green is stunning with the massive tree, flowing Lemorne architecture, and otherworldly music. Volt Forge is the massive industrial complex which harvests lightning strikes to power it. You make your way through assembly lines as you progress through the factory, and the whole thing just springs to life once you finally reactivate the power. Ice Belt is this cryo sleep facility where you slowly uncover exactly what has happened to the Lemorn. You slowly start to think that the pods are going to awaken once you turn things back on, and you have to frantically fight your way back to the surface before a holdout section with Tokabi. This was really the first holdout with an NPC, and it was a ton of fun. It would not be fun later down the line. I enjoyed getting the super missiles and needing to use them in the Great Mines. You get this feeling of dread whenever you have to use them because you know that the Grievers are going to ambush you whenever you use missiles. Fury Green, Ice Belt, and Volt Forge are all really awesome. And if only one, maybe two, were really linear, then I wouldn't mind the level design nearly as much. Unfortunately, all 5 areas leave nothing to the imagination. And that leads into the last area, Soul Valley. This thing is an abomination. It is a travesty to the entire Metroid series, and I have no idea how it made it into a full game. It is the most bland, boring, and unimaginative area I've ever seen in a game. It's a desert. Yeah, that's what it is. It's just a bunch of sand, a few shrines. Oh yeah, shrines, you know shrines? You guys all played Breath of the Wild, right? Don't you want every game to be like Breath of the Wild? Man, Breath of the Wild is such an awesome game. But of course, there's also green energy, these little crystals that are scattered throughout the map that you run into. And I mean, that's literally all you have to do. You run into them on your bike, and that's how you collect them. Every Prime game has had some kind of collectathon at the end. The Chozo artifacts in Prime 1, Sky Temple keys in Prime 2, and the energy cells in Prime 3. Retro knew how much we just absolutely adored these and couldn't live without them. So they decided to give us 2 things to collect at the end. Yeah, all those mech parts that you've run into throughout the entire game can finally be collected, because why give you that tool early on when they can wait until the end for you to finally get them? Oh, and also you have to have a random conversation in the middle of the fucking desert to even get the teleporter chip, because that makes total sense. Well, all of them are in Soul Valley, so it shouldn't take too long to get them all. Just kidding, there's randomly one in the volcano. Well, at least there's only 6, and they get marked on your map when you first find them, so it shouldn't take too long to get them all. Just kidding, you have to collect green energy too. Yep, the fucking idiots over at Retro decided that you have to drive circles around the map for half a fucking hour running into crystals. Yes, you can collect them while you play throughout the rest of the game, but I still had to drive around for 30 minutes anyway because fuck me, fuck good pacing, and fuck good game design. The reason why those collections were at least tolerable in past games was because the backtracking worked. Like, the whole world is interconnected. There's power-ups that you can find, the game gives you hints on where they are, but none of them are too explicit. But in Prime 4, you have to take the exact same path anytime you want to revisit any area. Take, for example, Ice Belt. When you first get there, it's amazing. You are working your way through this facility, exploring every square inch for a way to progress, taking in the horrific atmosphere, enjoying the frost that builds up on Samus's arm cannon, but you have to go the exact same way back up to escape. Then you have to go back down the same way if you want to retread old ground. The game does give you shortcuts that you can unlock here and there, which is great, but if the game wasn't so on rails the whole time, these wouldn't be necessary. Plus, if you want to get from one area to the other, you have to go through the desert. Each area is literally in a corner, so you're basically forced to traverse the entire thing if you want to get somewhere else. Then you have to go through the same long-ass loading screens just to get plopped at the very start of the area. Prime 3 had multiple planets instead of an interconnected labyrinth. However, this worked because there were multiple landing zones that you could fast travel between. There's no fast travel in this game. There's no way to go from one area to another without going through the worst area in the game, Soul Valley. Everything about the world is bogged down by the linear and dull traversal, and again, that's a shame because I really love each area in a vacuum. And the enemy variety is so lacking. You've got your basic critters that die in a few shots, but any enemy that's even remotely challenging is either one of the robots or a griever. That's it. There are variations here and there, but it gets so dull fighting the same enemies over and over and over again. So you repeatedly need to kill the same enemies, repeatedly traverse the same boring expanse of the desert, run into the same boring crystals over and over again, and none of the upgrades make this feel even remotely meaningful. Getting the screw attack and mowing through hordes of enemies in Dread is fantastic. Tearing through fights with the plasma beam in Prime 1 was so satisfying, but Prime 4... I don't know. If all of these issues didn't exist simultaneously, I could tolerate some of them. Like, Prime 1 had pretty generic environments. Prime 2's Sky Temple Key Hunt was a pain because you could really only do it at the end. Prime 3 had the Aurora unit who would tell you where to go. Prime 4 somehow takes decades of critique of the Prime trilogy and decides to merge all of the worst parts of every game. But as I'm finishing up this review, there are a few things that the game does do really well. The first is the music. It's really incredible, and I particularly love how the music absolutely comes to life when you power up Volt Forge for the first time. And really, the sound design in general is top-notch. Samus's screams when she gets hit are great as always. I know that's kind of a weird thing to praise, but that, along with seeing her reflection in the visor, has always been an amazing detail in the Prime games. I also like the feeling of having an evolving world. I know I've harped on the linear level design, but having the areas physically change when you go to them is a great addition, and I hope that gets carried over to the next Prime game. You know, when we get it in, like, 2050. The art design is amazing, especially with Samus's new suits. They're sleek and creative, and the Viola suit pairs perfectly with the bike. And like I've said, the game is a technical marvel. It's really incredible what Nintendo can do with the limited hardware, and every developer needs to take notes on how to optimize their games. If Nintendo can do it on this tiny handheld, other companies should put far more effort into making sure their games run smoothly. Prime 4 was a disappointment for me, and that's putting it lightly. I really tried to temper my expectations. I didn't want to get consumed by the hype, but the more I played, the more disappointed I was with the game. I actually noticed myself going through the stages of grief. I'm kind of bouncing between anger, depression, and acceptance at this point. I don't think I've ever played a game that's made me so angry from a design standpoint. Like, yeah, I've gotten mad playing competitive games before, but the foundation of Prime 4 is so utterly broken that I would have to put the game down while playing it just to cool off. I was just so excited to play this, guys. I took a day off work to have a long weekend so I could really take my time and enjoy it. It's just sad, you know? The whole Metroid series was on a hiatus for so long. Dread was an absolute home run, and now this. It makes me wonder if what Bandai Namco had originally developed was any better. I guess at this point we'll never know. All I know is that Metroid Prime 4 is a catastrophic failure. It utterly fails as a Prime game, a Metroidvania game, and just as a game in general. Thanks for watching.